team versus individual and what that looks like. So it's been an interesting case study to watch this whole thing unfold, because at one point you kind of feel for the Spurs on the one hand because they've seen him in practice. They've seen him potentially look like he's ready to go. But then on the other hand, for Kawhi Leonard, if he feels like he's not 100%, I can't fault the player for thinking that if he's not ready to go, then he shouldn't step on the floor. So there's a lot of layers to this, and then you throw on the old school with Greg Popovich and all the things that have come along with that. It's been interesting to see how this thing has unfolded all year long, but at the same time, it's a really nasty. It's starting to turn into a nasty situation for the Spurs. Very un-Spurs-like.
Right.
It's been a model organization for a long time. So we'll see how this plays out during the summer and what those contract negotiations look like potentially for Kawhi Leonard. If he finds himself potentially elsewhere, good for him. If not, him and Pop can work it out. Good for them also. Because I still think if he does remain with the Spurs, they have a very bright future in terms of the Spurs team. So they'll get it figured out one way or another. But it's been interesting to watch this thing unfold for the Spurs team throughout this year.
Right. Yeah, man, that's definitely go. Because they get ready to get swept,
Oh yeah, but, this is done. Yeah, this is done.
On his Joel Embiid, right? Joel Embiid said, "Stop treating me like a baby. I'm ready to play, man. Let's do or die for us. So why do you think the Sixers is holding them back like this, man? You can't look for the future. This man been hurt most of his career. Let the man go play."
Well, I think you said it right there. His injury history has shown that he, at times, can't stay on the floor for long periods of time. So I could see why the Sixers are being cautious with him, because his history tells us that he's had significant injuries for significant periods of time, and even this year limiting him in his minutes at certain points of the season. They're trying to ensure that he doesn't, one, hurt himself any further going forward, and two, making sure that they can get the most out of him for the time that he's out there on the floor. So I can see it from both perspectives. Joel Embiid feels like he's ready to take on a full-time load and be able to play more extended minutes, but at the same time, if you're the Sixers, you're trying to protect your asset when it comes to Joel Embiid. So I get it from both sides, but at the same time, this is going to be a long series. I think we will see Joel Embiid at some point during this series, either that's during limited minutes as they work him back into the rotation, or if they decide to go ahead and go full tilt with him and let him play extended minutes. We'll see what Brett Brown, the head coach of the Sixers, does for them. But at the same time, both sides have a legitimate reason for feeling the way that they do. And the Sixers have to do the best they can to protect what they have in terms of not only this year in terms of a future with the 76ers, and also Embiid looking out for his long-term future in terms of playing extended minutes and what that looks like for him to help this team, continue to move forward in the East. So, like I said, I think we'll see Embiid at some point during this series. It's just a matter of when and not if. But then looking at how many minutes he's actually going to play is going to be important as the Sixers continue to matriculate themselves through this tough series. I think it'll be a long series with the Miami Heat. So.
Wow, yeah, definitely that, man. This is pretty interesting the rest of the way down the line to see if Philly can get back to how they was in Game 1, because they kept the guard out the game too, man. The rookie guard. And, I mean, the Coach Brown got a lot of questions to answer, man, because for one, why has you got this young boy on the bench when he's ready to go? He showed in Game 1 that he can handle the playoff pressure so far. And, you didn't bring him back to play last night. Come on. That's real stupid to me. But the Sixers got to really answer some questions. And Thursday they got to come out and play a whole different brand of game, because you're going to be down in South Beach. And it's going to be a lot of distractions down there. Yeah, man. A lot of distractions, man. But New Orleans and the Blazers. New Orleans, a lot of people say stole one, but I don't really think they stole it. I think they went out there and played hard and took one. What you feel about that series?
Yeah, I mean, Anthony Davis 35 and 14 in Game 1. Rajon Rondo had 17 assists. Rajon Rondo's a different player when it comes to playoff time, and he's going to give Damian Lillard and C.J. McCollum problems because he's a big physical guard that creates matchup problems on both ends of the basketball. When Rajon Rondo is locked in on both sides of the basketball, offensively, especially defensively. He's a completely different player. And obviously, Drew Holiday is still one of the better guards in the league, especially when he's healthy and playing well, and he's been doing so over the last several weeks for the Pelicans. So it's kind of a catch-22 with this series, because obviously there is still a lot of talent left on that Pelicans basketball team, but it also begs the question, what if DeMarcus Cousins was still healthy and playing for this Pelicans team? How much better could this series be with him in the lineup for the Pelicans? Because Anthony Davis will have to do it all for them on both ends of the basketball. And the Pelicans stole one in Portland, but it's going to be a very competitive series. I mean, I think if I remember correctly, only 3 games separated the 3 seed from what was the 10th seed in the Western Conference. So a lot of these teams, obviously only 8 teams making it on both sides, but at the same time, this Western Conference has been extremely competitive all year, and a lot of these teams are very close and very similar in terms of record and in terms of play. So I think the series will be a long series also, just given the competitive nature that we saw in the Western Conference this year. And a lot of these teams, except for obviously at the top with Golden State and Houston, are very evenly matched in these playoffs. So we should see some long series, whether it be obviously with the Blazers and the Pelicans and other series. Also, it's going to be a long set of Western Conference playoffs. But no, credit to Alvin Gentry and the New Orleans Pelicans for what they did in that first game, going on the road and getting a tough road win. The Jazz Thunder series is going to be a long series too, after what we saw in Game 1 between them. So yeah, these Western Conference playoffs are going to be knockout, drag-out series. But yeah, give credit to New Orleans for showing up and getting a nice 2-point win on the road. I expect the Blazers to come back in Game 2 and put themselves in position tonight to get themselves back in the series, going back to New Orleans this week.
Wow, yeah, that's big right there. One more, the Bucks and Celtics. That was a drag me down, hard fought, physical game there. I watched that whole game, man. And the Celtics won in overtime. I think the Bucks got tied in overtime, man. But what you expect out of that tonight, man? Because I look at it like this, right? The Bucks gonna have it. They're gonna look at the tapes, and they're gonna have an edge on their shoulder, man. Because for one, Al Horford was trying to bully the Greek Freak, and Bledsoe was letting Rozier shake and bake him and wasn't going strong and posting him up because he's bigger than Rozier. So do you think Milwaukee going to come in there and take one from them and go back home?
Man, this is a tough series because both of these teams are obviously extremely talented, and Game 1 was a phenomenal basketball game. The Celtics calling card is going to be on the defensive end. Can they at least contain, Giannis Antetokounmpo and put themselves in a place where they're scoring enough points? Because obviously scoring is at a premium without Kyrie Irving and without Gordon Hayward, which they haven't had him all year long. So Terry Rozier for the last couple months has played extremely well for them. Obviously hit the big shot to give them the lead with 0.5 seconds before they ultimately tied it, but then in overtime. But folks like Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum have got to continue to step up. Al Horford, who played well in Game 1, continue to step up and play physical down in the post against a talented Bucks team, but still inexperienced at this point. And I think Brad Stevens will do enough to outcoach the Bucks to put themselves in a place where they will win this series. So I would not be surprised if Milwaukee won Game 2 tonight, but at the same time, I'm picking Boston to win Game 2 at home because I think they are a much better coach team, have a little bit more talent altogether to put themselves in a position where they win this series. I don't think they go much further than this in terms of the Eastern Conference playoffs, but they have enough to beat Milwaukee in round 1. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if Antetokounmpo came back tonight and had a huge basketball game for the Bucks. So I expect the Celtics to win Game 2 tonight as they go back to Milwaukee. But it's going to be a long series. That's going to be a long series, too. I expect that one to go 6 or 7 games also because I think the Bucks will win a couple of games at home, too.
Okay. I got one last basketball before we get on the big question I got to ask you. It's about something we both like. All right. The last basketball question is, is Cleveland done?
No. No, Cleveland's not done. No. I think everybody's had a complete overreaction to what happened in Game 1. Number one, Cleveland didn't hit shots. They were horrible from the three-point line. And defensively, obviously, Victor Oladipo exposed them in a number of ways. His ability to pull up from the three-point line and hit a number of three-pointers in that game. The Pacers just out. They were ready to play. Nate McMillan had this bunch ready to play. And this is the team in the Pacers. They're not scared of Cleveland. They beat them 3 out of 4 times here by a combined 6 points in those first two. In 2 of those games, and then they had a 17-point blowout earlier in the year. But obviously, this Pacers team is not afraid of them. You saw the focus of Victor Oladipo in his interview after the game. This is a guy who really believes in his ability. He's already gotten extra motivation from Dan Gilbert, who had some disparaging things to say about the trade that was made between the Thunder and the Pacers to bring Oladipo over to the Pacers. So this is a young man who I believe will win NBA's Most Improved Player of the Year, and a guy who is not afraid of the moment and showed it in Game 1. But I fully expect Cleveland to win Game 2. I think you'll see a much more aggressive LeBron James from the outset. Tyronn Lue's calling for a much more aggressive LeBron James at the outset of Game 2. I think you'll get that from him. And more importantly, the Cavs are going to hit shots, I believe, much better in Game 2 than they did in Game 1. So I think J.R. Smith will play much better. And I think they'll get much more contributions from their role players in terms of Larry Nance and Rodney Hood. And it's a make-or-miss league. If you don't make shots, you're going to lose a lot of ball games. And you saw that in Game 1 where the Cavs just simply couldn't hit from the outside. We know what they are defensively. They haven't been good defensively all year long, but they're going to have to find ways in these playoffs to get stops when they need them, because we know they're not going to stop anybody for extended periods of time, but they have to get stops and spurts in order to give themselves an opportunity to win games. But, yeah, the Pacers aren't scared of the Cavs team, and they played well in Game 1, but I fully expect the Cavs to win. I think people are forgetting. This is the same LeBron James that was down 3-1 a couple of years ago in the NBA Finals. If LeBron James isn't worried about it, I'm not worried about it. So I think they'll be fine.
Well, that was a couple of years ago, and this is 2018. We'll see.
Yeah.
I got a different feeling about it, but we'll see. I hope they do pull it out, man, but we'll see. But the big question is, man, did you watch Atlanta Housewives Sunday night, man?
Yes, I did. I did. My wife and I watched the Real Housewives of Atlanta Reunion Part 2. Kim Zolciak is crazy. She's absolutely crazy. Look, she's got her chauffeur and her husband, Croy Bierman, driving her around all the time.
Right.
Nene obviously has a legitimate beef and gripe with Kim, and it's been going on. This feud has been better than some of the WWE feuds that I've seen in recent years between Kim Zolciak and Nene Leakes. So I think it's obviously it'll continue more into next week. But this has turned into the Kim and Nene show because everybody else has pretty much had their say. I mean, Cynthia had her small storyline. Cynthia continues to struggle to find storylines over the years. She had her whole episode with her boyfriend, Will, that didn't, they're off now. Candy's my favorite because she just does her thing and just keeps it moving. Portia is Portia, whatever.
Little Dempsey.
Kenya, Kenya, I don't know really what to say about her. Obviously, Sheree tried to comfort her husband earlier in the season, talking about his nose ring and all this other stuff. But, I think Housewives of Atlanta is starting to run its course a little bit. They're starting to search for storylines that aren't necessarily there anymore. And I think within the next year or two, you may see the show come to an end. But, yeah, I'm still a huge Housewives of Atlanta fan. And this week was it got better at the end. It was pretty pedestrian until the end when Kim came out there because there wasn't much happening. But I think it'll be much more active this weekend in the final part of the reunion. So,
okay, what do you think about Kim lips and nose, man? Didn't she get a box job? I mean, serious, man. You can't get no better than that. She must ain't got no real money, man. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I love the question that Andy asked her. He said, you know, what's the end game with your lips? Like, how